guys, my name is Belle, and I'll be giving you an overview of my Capstone project, The Individual Advocate, Coping with Climate Grief and Ways We Can Fight Back. I partnered with the Utah, Bothell, and Cascadia colleges for this project, and I did a podcast mini-series called Growing Up Green with my co-host Vanessa Reyes. So now that we've got all the basic details out of the way, we can launch into the project itself. So what is climate grief, and why does it matter to us anyways? Climate grief is a widespread psychological response to the ecological loss of changing climate. And this can mean a lot of different kinds of emotions like anger or fear, denial, depression, because climate grief is a cycle in and of itself. And as we look at figure 1, we can see the initial reaction and all of the different ways that people can react to climate change before reaching that accepting reality stage. And the reason that these emotions and this cycle of feelings that we go through is so important is because a lot of mass mobilization and participation of people in environmental events occurs in social movements. So there are a lot of angry or anxious people out there who are passionate about the environment or care a lot, but they don't have a lot of direction to guide them beyond that. So developing plans to cope with climate grief and try to regulate these emotions can help with the responses that we feel and try to change things to be more positive reinforcement and try to reframe our approach to climate change. So, as I mentioned before, my internship was a podcast with Utah, Bothell, and Cascadia with the Common Cause for Sustainability podcast, mainly focusing on environmental education and communications. And I also did a literary review of climate grief to gather all of my data. And so I interviewed 5 different people on their opinions on how to cope with climate grief, policies, social impacts, all of these different topics. And eventually, I combined them into 4 different roles based off of Bill Moyer's Doing Democracy on social activism, except I altered them to fit environmental activism. So we have the reformer, the change agent, citizen, and the rebel. And I have quotes that go along with each of the people that I interviewed who fit these roles the best. And so just giving each of them a quick overview, the reformer is mostly policy and law-based. It really emphasizes how important our voting is and what political campaigns and committee hearings can have an impact on environmental events specifically. Change agent is more education-based, showing how important it is to communicate ideas of climate change and climate grief in the classroom so that we can teach younger generations why this is important and how we can regulate our emotions that way. The citizen role is mainly trying to be sustainable at home and in public, making a commitment to the common good so that other people may do the same. And the rebel role is the most direct one out of all 4 of them. It's focusing on youth activism and different campus organizations, any way that you can take direct action. And if we look at figure 2, we can see all of the different youth activists and activist programs like Divest Ed and Zero Hour that I've listed below that you can join and help out yourself with. So main takeaways here would be that social connections and positive reinforcement is very important. Just this emphasis on community and knowing that we're not alone makes climate grief a lot less overwhelming and less of an impossible task to deal with. It takes climate change and it makes it down to a level that we feel like we can deal with, which is really important when we're trying to get more people to engage in climate activism. So this is implementing all different kinds of problem solving as a community, exposing yourself to new knowledge so that you're learning more every day and keeping up to date with environmental issues. And then if we move on to the implications of how does this impact us in the long run, happier stories and showing this positive reinforcement again with a lot of emphasis on them shows that younger generations have a future to look forwards to and a future that we want to be in. And the podcast miniseries will be a permanent form of educational stories for future generations. It'll be available to anyone to promote this sense of sustainability and connection. And coping mechanisms will vary from person to person, but finding that support system for you and being able to take action in any way that you can are probably the most effective methods to fight against climate change. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation.